Hello students, I'm Professor Shraddha Firke from the KK Wag Arts, Commerce Science, Computer Science College, Kaka Sahib Nagar, Rani. Today we are going to study the control structures in C programming. So what are the basic control structures used in C that we are going to study in this video? So let's see what are the C program controls and flowcharts. We will see the controlling of the program execution flow by using the selection, repetition and the branching. So the program begins its execution at the main function. As we all know that the main function will start the execution of our C program, and the statements within the main function are then executed from the top down step, that is line by line. However, this order is rarely encountered in real C program because of the control flow statements. The order of the execution within the main function or the main body may be branched, and the changing the order in which the statements are executed is called the program control. Accomplished by using the program control statements, so we can control the program flows using the control statements or the flow control statements. So there are three types of program controls, that is a sequence control structure, selection structures such as if else, nested if else, if else if, and the switch case, that is a break statement. And the third one is repetition, that is a looping statements. For example, for loop, while loop and do while loop. So the certain C functions and keywords that will also can use to follow the control of the flow, program flow. So let's start with the first, that is if else and if else if. So what is a if? If it is a conditional statement. If the basic syntax for the if is if statement, that the condition statement that we want to check, then depending on this condition, whatever the true statements that we have to execute, that will be comes into a statement part and the next statements. So if this condition is true, then the statement part will be executed, and if the condition is false or the zero, then the next statements that will follow the if statement block and it will be executed. So during the exam execution, the based on some condition, this some code were skipped and some code will be executed. So this is how the syntax of the if condition goes. If there exists only one statement after this condition or the true block, then it will be directly printed here or directly written here. But if there are the different types of statements after the condition is true, then they are executed or they are combined into the curly bracket, that is there exists a block of statements, so we have to use the curly brackets. So this is the basic syntax of your if statement. Then comes a if else statements. So what is if else? Same like a if statement, but here exists one else condition, that is if the some condition is true, then your statement first will be executed. Otherwise, if the condition is false, then it will go into an else part and the statement 2 will be executed. So if the condition is true, then the else part will be skipped, and if the condition is true, false, then your if statement 1 will be skipped. So in between set statement 1 and statement 2, there will be execution of only either statement 1 or the statement 2, but not both statements. So this can be if these two statements are the block of statements, then it will be written into a curly brackets. So after doing these two statements, the next statement will be executed. Also, there exists a nested structure of an if else. So if else can construct the nested, that is a place one within another and in to any depth. Okay, so the general form of if else or if else if is like this. So here we have defined this three level of this depth. Just like there are three different ifs and there are three different elses. So first if condition, if this condition is true, then it will go into directly second if, and if this condition is also true, then it will go into a third if, and if third condition is also true, then it will execute the statement 4 and it will skip this else part. If this condition is false, then it will go into its else part, and if this statement 2 will be false, then it will go into this statement 2, or the condition 2 is false, then it will go into a else part. And if the original first statement is false, then it will go into a else part and the statement first will be executed, and after execution of any of these three or four statements, it will go into a next statement. So it will skip some statements if the condition is true or the condition is false, depending on their if else statements. Also we can write this if else if statements into this level also, or this type of statements also. So if condition 1 is true, then the statement 1 is executed, else we will check the condition 2. If this executes, if this is true, then the statement 2 will execute, otherwise we will go into a third condition. If this is true, then the statement 3 will execute, and if neither of these conditions is true, then it will execute the default else statement, that is statement 4, and finally then the next statement. So this is one of the default statements of these if else conditions. Now the next control flow statement is your switch case break statement. So what is a switch case statement? The most flexible selection program control of this switch. It enables the program to execute the different statement that is based on an condition or an exceptions that can have more than two values. So it is also called as a multiple choice statements. If the in the if statement were limited to the evaluating and expressions that could have only two logical values, that is true or false, but more than two values, if we have to check for more than two values, then we will have to use nested if. But in switch case statement, it will make such nesting unnecessary, so we will use this together, the case and break statement in the switch statement. So that will make our testing, or it will make our nesting purpose easily, and we can have the multiple choice statements. So this is what the basic syntax of your switch statement. How we can write the switch statement: switch and in bracket condition. So whatever the matching statements for this condition are there, that will be written into a case statement. So case template 1 will contain the matching statement with this condition, and template 2, template 3, and in each case statement, if this condition is matching with the template 1, then the statement will be executed, this statement will be executed, and finally break the execution. If it is not matched, then the second template will match with this and the statement will be executed and then break. And such a way we can write the n number of statements that can match this condition statement, and we can execute the multiple case statements, and we have the break statement after each case statement. And there exists one default statement. If none of these statements will be called, then finally the default statement will be called and default statements will be executed. So after execution of the switch, the next statements will be executed. So how this follows: it evaluates the condition and it compares its value with the templates that can follow each case level. If the match is found between the condition and one of the template, then it will execution will transfer to the statements that follows the case label. And if no match will be found, then the execution will be transferred to the statement that can follow the optional, that is a default label, that is the last level or the default label. If no match is found and there is no default label, then the execution will pass to the first statement and it will follow the switch statement, closing brackets, and it will go into a next statement, that is it will become out of the loop. So to ensure that only the statements that are associated with the matching template are executed, so include a break keyword where needed, which terminates the entire switch statement. So the statements that can be a block of code in the curly brackets also. So how the flow charts of these if else and switch break statements will have. This is the structure, or this is the flow chart for the if else statement. Here we can have the condition. If it is true, then this block will be executed. If false, then it will go into the next statements. Then if else structure, how? Here the condition is checked. If the condition is true, then it will move here. If it is false, then it will move here, and finally to the next statement. So any one of this will be executed and it will go into a next statement. So this is a case break statement or the switch statement. First case condition and their statements, and then finally break. Second condition, its statements, and then break. This is how it will work. We can check the n number of values here. Nth execution for nth condition, then nth statements and break, and finally the default statements. If none of this will execute, then it will execute the default statement and it will come out of the loop. So this is what the flow charts of your if else and switch. Now until we have studied the selection process or the selection controls, now we'll see the repetition control, that is the looping structures. So first loop is the for loop statement. So it will execute the code block for the certain number of times, that is it will repeat the execution of the statements or the block of statements. So the code block may have no statements, either one statement or more statements. The for statement can cause a for loop to be executed in fixed number of times. So what is the form or what is the syntax for loop? For, then the initial value, conditions, increment and decrement, and these three values have been separated by the semicolons. And finally, if all these are true, then it will go into a statements or the statement block, and then finally the next block. So these statements will be executed multiple times, either one time, no time, one time, or more than that. So what is the initial statement, condition and increment? That are the valid expressions in C. The statement, it may be a single or compound statement, that is a block of code. In the for statement, it will encounter during the program execution. Then the program execution flow starts. How? First, the initial value will be evaluated. For example, let's say integer number 1. Then the condition will be executed. Typically, it will be the relational operation or relational expression. Depending on that condition statement, it will have the values either true or false. If it is false, then the for loop will be terminated and the expression will go into a next statement. And if the condition is true, then the statements will be executed in the loop. And after this execution of the statement, then it will go into an increment and decrement value. So after this, either increment or decrement or both of them will be executed, and again it will go into a condition checking, and again the execution starts from the step 2, and this will be repeated until the condition is true and it will become false. Then it will come out of the loop to the next statements. So this is how the flow for the for loop will be work. Let's see one example of the for loop. It will print the numbers from 1 to 10. So what is integer void? Void main. There exists an integer n count. The variable have the n count. It will display the numbers from 1 to 10. So what we can do, we can have the for loop and the n counter value will be started from 1, that is the initialization. Then what is the condition? It should go up to the 10, that is less than or equal to 10, and then we will have to increment one by one value. So after initiation and after checking the condition, that is n counter is less than equal to 10, yes, for the 1 it is this condition is true, then it will print that value and go into an incrementation. After 2, it will again check the condition and print the 2. Again it will increment the 2 by 3. Again it will check up to the 10 values, it will check and it will print the values. So this is what is the output of this function or output of this program. So basically for loop is very flexible to construct. It can use to decrement the counter also and increment also. So we can have the decrement value, that is we can decrement from 100 to 0. We can also have the increment. We can increment the counter by only, not only by 1 but using the other values than the 1. The initial value can be omitted if the test variable has been initiated before. So we can have the semicolon also, and we can go forward for the condition and increment and decrement. So this is how we can write also. We can also skip the increment and decrement or the condition checking, that is if we want to write anything into the for loop, then we can skip the 3 of these also, and we can have only the semicolon, that is a blank for loop we can write also. Next repetition or the next loop is while loop. So it will evaluate the block of statement as long as the specified condition is true. While the condition is true, the loop will be executed. So this is how the syntax of the while loop. While, then the condition, if this condition is true, then the statement will be executed. Again it will check for the condition. Again the statements will be executed. The statements can be a single or the compound statement. So how it is encountered or how the events are evaluated? First, the condition will be evaluated. If the condition is false, then it will move directly to the next statement. But if the condition is true, then the statement or the block of statements will be executed, and this will repeat up to the condition is true. And whenever the condition becomes false, it will be returned from the execution and it will go into a next statement. This is how the while loop flowchart shows. Start, then evaluation. If this is false, then it will stop the execution. If it is true, then it will execute the statement and again repeat the condition and execution of the statement until the execution or the condition is false. This is how one example is for the while loop. Here also we have defined or we have printed the values from 1 to 12 and we have incremented the value by 1. So this is what the program for this. The next loop is do while loop. So what is a loop? It will execute the block of statements as long as the specified condition is true at the last one. So what is the difference between while loop and do while loop? It will test the condition at the end of the loop rather than the beginning. As we have seen that in while loop we will check the condition at the top, and in do while loop we check the condition at the bottom position. So what is the structure for the do while loop? First do, then the statements, and then checking the condition while and the condition. If this condition is true, we will again move to the do loop and the statements will be executed. So how it flows? And the statements or the block of statements can be written in this do loop. So first of all, these statements will be executed. Either the condition is true or false. For once, at least for once, the do statements will be executed. then the condition will be evaluated. If it is true, then again it will move into the do loop and the statements will be executed. And if the statements or the condition is false, then the next statements will be executed. So in do while loop, the statements that we have given in the do loop, they will be executed at least for a once. So this is how the flowchart of do while loop looks. First of all, the statements will be executed. So at least for a once, the statements will be executed, and then we will check for the condition. If condition is true, then the statement will again repeatedly executed, and if it is false, then we will stop the execution. So until we have studied different flow statements and different loops, but rather than the loops and the control statements, there exist some another keywords or the functions that can also control the flow of our program. So first statement or the keyword is continue keyword. So what is a continue keyword? It will force the next iteration to make the place immediately. So take place immediately, and it will skip the instructions that may follow it. So the continue statement can only be used inside the loop, that is for loop, while loop or do while loop, and not instead inside the switch or selection statements. So whenever this executes, it transfers the control to the condition, that is the expression part in the while or do while loop, and to the increment expression in the for loop. So unlike the break statement, the continue do not forces the termination of the loop, but it merely transfers to the next iteration. Same way the continue statement is or the keyword, we have also the go to keyword. It is a go to statement. So the go to statement is one of the unconditional jumping or unconditional branching statement. While whenever we use the program execution, it encounters the go to statement, the execution immediately jumps or the branches from one location to the specified location by the go to statement. This statement is unconditional. Because of the execution, it always branches when a go to statement comes across. So the branching do not depends on any condition. Without any condition checking, we can transfer our flow of program. So the go to statement is its target label must be located in the same function, although they can be in a different blocks. The use of go to statement, it will transfer the execution both into and outside the loop. However, using the go to statement is strongly not recommended because it is unconditional statement. Always use the other C branching statement. Whenever the program execution branches with the go to statement, it do not records or no record is kept of where the execution is came from. So we cannot say that how we can return from this called function. There exists one function known as a exit function. The exit function is normally used to terminate the execution of the flow. The exit function that will terminate your program execution and it will return the control to the operating system. So what is the basic syntax of the exit function? Exit and its status, either it may be 0 or 1. 0, that will be program will be terminated normally, and 1 will indicate that the program terminated but with some sort of errors. The return value is usually ignored, but it is returned with 0 or 1 statement. So this is what the control and the flow charts of the control flow statements, and here we will end our video. Thank you so much.